Hey friends, in today's vlog I want to talk about some of the benefits of collaborating, of working with other musicians. Because I think for me it's probably been the most beneficial and enjoyable part of my whole musical journey, particularly in this ambient lane, where I think we can become quite self-sufficient because we're not necessarily reliant on other musicians, band members, orchestras, and a wider circle. We can produce lots of music on our own. And so by working with others, by collaborating, it helps us to step outside of that box that we can create for ourselves. And there's so many benefits of doing that. The first of which I think is that we can learn a lot from others, whether that's their general philosophy and approach to making music, whether it's certain musical theory techniques or production techniques, how they mix, how they structure and produce music, perhaps down to tiny details as to what chord progressions they use, what instruments and how they use those, some of their recording techniques, some of their sound design techniques. The list is endless. And we all have our strengths and weaknesses. So by working with others, we can perhaps match those up, and perhaps what one of our collaborators isn't so strong on, we can make up for, and vice versa. It's just a brilliant way of developing and becoming a more all-round, better, polished musician. In addition to that, one of the amazing benefits of working with others is it can help us to step out of our normal lane, the normal way that we do things. I certainly have a process and a structure and an approach that I take to most of my music, which is great for a workflow point of view, but it can mean you get stuck in a bit of a creative treadmill. And sometimes you need someone else to come in with a different approach to help you break free of that so you can be more creative and produce something that sounds different. At the same time, as I spoke about in a previous video, sometimes we get stuck in a creative rut. Sometimes we even go as far as thinking, what's the point? Maybe I should give up. But working with someone else can give you that impetus. Perhaps they'll give you some great feedback on where you're going with it, on your music in general, but also listening to their ideas and working together can help you jump forward a few steps and break through that creative hiatus that you might be experiencing. And I found there to be a tremendous synergy in that process of working together, almost to the point where you create something that's greater than the sum of its parts. It's not just your music plus theirs equals a result. It creates something that would never have existed outside the 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 of you working together. It creates something really unique and special. Collaborating can also help you to increase your listener base, because when you're working and releasing music with someone else, their fans become your fans and vice versa. So by putting music out, you're reaching a wider audience. That music you're working so hard to create is reaching more ears and therefore hopefully helping you to improve your streaming numbers and ultimately your fan base and your revenue. In a similar way, it can open up other doors for you. If the artist you're working with is closely tied to a record label or two, and that project you're working on ends up getting released through that label, that can also help you to develop closer ties with a label to perhaps in future release solo projects or work with that label as well, which can again increase your musical footprint and help you to make progress and push forward with your musical career and ambitions. Now, when it comes to who you work with, this swings two ways, and I've done both and loved both. Firstly, if you're an emerging artist, I'd recommend trying to work with artists that are a little bit further ahead of you in terms of how much music they've released, what their streaming numbers are like, what their fan base is like, because it helps to drag yours further up. It comes back to my previous point about your fans become theirs and vice versa. So if someone has a bigger fan base and listenership, by releasing music with them and under their name, it helps you to hopefully accelerate your progress a bit more. And that's certainly something I've done, and certainly something I continue to do. I'm looking for opportunities to work with people who are further ahead on their journey, so I can learn from them, I can work closely with them, and it's mutually beneficial. But the same goes in reverse, and something I've really enjoyed doing is working with artists that are just starting out in the ambient genre particularly, who perhaps need a bit of a leg up. Their music's great, but they just don't have the exposure, they haven't had the amount of time necessary to really build that fan base. And so I do also love working with artists that are perhaps not quite so developed or as far on in their journey as me, because it helps them. Just while we're talking about reaching out and approaching other artists and who to work with, I've had nothing but positive experiences by contacting other artists and making those connections and asking to work together. It's always been a positive experience, and I appreciate that might not be the case for everyone, and I think particularly within the ambient music community, everyone is super helpful and always willing to work together to a greater or lesser degree. And so particularly if you're in the ambient style genre, it's something that I would definitely encourage you to do if you haven't already. And if it's something you have done, do it more. I don't think you can collaborate enough, really. And in fact, I've got a long list of people I still haven't collaborated with, but would love to, and hopefully next year I can work with them as well. It does actually become a bit of a headache in a good way, because now I've collaborated with so many people that I've enjoyed so much, I now want to go back and work with them more. And as that list of collaborators grows, it gets more and more difficult to squeeze in all the music. So it does require a bit of planning as well, not just on your part, but also on theirs, because busy artists trying to find time in the release schedule can be a challenge. But nevertheless, absolutely go for it and contact people, even if you're worried they might say, no, not this time. Just keep persevering. Collaborations don't have to be restricted to just one artist working with one other either. I've done several collaborations now with 2, 3, 4, I think even 5 artists on one track, which again has other benefits, can be logistically difficult to arrange, but I've really enjoyed those. And sometimes all you add is a couple of recordings to each of those tracks to create something that's really quite unique and special. So don't be restricted in thinking just working with one other artist. Go for it and see how many people you can squeeze onto one track. And then finally, and I think most importantly, the greatest benefit to working with others is making friends. And I certainly have made some amazing friends all around the world through making music with them. Because you're not just looking for a finished product, you're not just working to a goal or a target with some other unknown entity. You're working with a person. And by making a piece of art together, it brings you into friendship and into relationship. And that is something truly special. Again, I come back to the ambient community. There are some amazing, generous, gifted, talented, wonderful people within this community who I am extremely grateful for, have learnt from, have developed a strong bond with, and I hope that that continues. So if you do it for no other reason, if perhaps you've been thinking about collaborating but have been put off by some horror stories, or perhaps just a fear of not being good enough or having that imposter syndrome, put that to one side, send the message, send the email, and try and work something out. And if it doesn't work the first time, if you get no response, or you get, sorry, I'm busy at the moment response, try something else. Because I guarantee you will love it. You'll love the end product, you'll love making the art, but most importantly, you will love the friends that you make along the way. So I'll end on that positive note, and thanks again for joining me on this vlog. Please do check out my other videos. I'm trying to branch out a little bit more. I did one on giving a tour of my pedal board the other day, which seems to have gone down quite well. So I hope to do a few more like that. I will keep doing these vlogs as well. And if you have any ideas or anything else you'd like me to talk about, demonstrate or show on my YouTube channel, please do let me know. Also, you can follow my progress with all my various music projects by signing up to my mailing list or follow me on Instagram or various other social media channels. I'd very much appreciate that. Otherwise, I'll leave you to your day, and thanks very much for joining me. Bye.